Good morning. Coffee? Yes, please. Hey, it's Care. Welcome to Monte at the Lake. Today we're going to talk about coffee. One of my favorite subjects. So we all know about the beauty of coffee-dyed paper. And they always turn out so different depending on how you do it, depending on the paper. There's all kinds of different things that can influence how papers turn out. Sometimes the blue ink of notebook paper runs with the brown of the coffee, which has a lot of green in it all by itself. So it makes kind of a greeny cast. Sometimes if there's ink on it, it runs. And depending on how it's dried and depending on how it's dyed, will make different patterns. Depending on if they're wrinkled or not, it all matters. Of course, when you coffee dye paper, you could coffee dye. This is graph paper, loose leaf paper, copy paper, deli paper. This is colored loose leaf, those pastel colored loose leaf papers. So when you get out the stuff to do your coffee dyeing, don't just stop at copy paper. Do book pages and various kinds of filler paper and deli paper and any kind of paper you have around the house. Give it a shot. You never know how it's going to turn out. They all turn out differently. And then quite often what I do with my stamped papers, with my dyed papers, is I stamp on them so that I have stuff that's ready for collage or clusters. Beautiful. Beautiful. All kinds of different things. Stamps. And then when you need it, you just tear a piece off. And add it to something. Add it to a new envelope to make it look old. We're talking about coffee today. Care, try and stay on topic. Would you please? Thank you very much. It can be a quick dip if you take bird walks. Okay. But today we're going to talk about other uses of instant coffee in the craft room. So we've covered coffee dyed paper. We all know about that. I've shown this several times, but since we're talking about coffee, I thought I would revisit it. It's just a spray bottle from Walmart, and I filled it with instant coffee, super strong instant coffee. And that allows me to, and by the way, this is my good stuff from the fridge that I can't seem to find my $1.25 tree. Actually, it's a Dollar Tree because it's way old. I got a giant jar of it from the Dollar Tree before the price increase. So don't feel like you have to use expensive coffee. I just couldn't find my jar and I needed a prop. This is good stuff. But if that's all you have, it doesn't take much to play. So whatever you have on hand, you can use. Regular coffee works too, but you'll have to make it really, really strong in order to make this kind of stuff. Weak coffee will work because tea works. So it depends on how light or dark you want it. I kind of like it kind of dark. Kinda is the new beautiful, LOL. Anyway, I use my spray to instantly vintage up papers. I give it a quick spray and then I put it near a heater vent or out in the sun to dry, or I hit it with the hair dryer. But I always can vintage something up really quick like. And another thing I saw Eva at Bohemian Crafting do, which I think is brilliant. You know, sometimes we're just so hell-bent for leather that we need the tool. Tim Holtz has a beautiful coffee ring stamp and spatter stencil and whatever. I don't even know how much it cost. I do know it's Tim Holtz, and I do know that means it's pricey. We all have a coffee cup, and they all have round bases. So instead of buying this Tim Holtz version, if you don't already have it, and if you think you need it, just use your coffee cup. Done. What I've done, I have these little, that in there for now, I probably regret that, but I have these little, they're pet food tops. And I put them on my coffee when I'm not drinking it to keep dust and hair out that flies around with the heater. And in the summer, fruit flies like my coffee because I like it so sweet, and so I have to keep something on it. So these just fit perfectly every mug that I have. So anything that's flat, a little bowl, a little lid, like a mason jar lid, plastic mason jar lid would work. Anything that's flat and round that your bottom will fit in. I just put a little bit of my super strong coffee in there and use your mug as a stamp. And they turn out beautifully. Let me show you. Let me just show you. So I'll do one on here. So all I've done, again, is I put some of that coffee in there and just use it as a stamp. That's turning green because I have green paper behind it, or blue ink, I guess it is. So that wet coffee is going to mix with that ink that's on my page. But fear not. Give it a little twist. Do something like that. You know, if you spill coffee on something, usually you try to mop it up. So you could do that. There's all kinds of ways to make that beautiful coffee thing that we like so much. Give it a little twist. I love it. I just love that. So you can use it for stamping. Now that got me thinking, you know, because everything does. I wondered if I could stamp with other things. Pardon me while I do this on the fly. This wasn't part of it, but I'm going to try. So if it worked with a big coffee ring, it'll work with a little coffee ring. This is just a top from NyQuil, just to make circles. So you can use your instant coffee to mark make. Another thing that I've done is make what I call coffee paint. So it's not going anywhere. It's just like a giant pan of coffee paint. It is very simple. Put a little bit of water in a microwave safe cup. Just a little tiny bit. You don't need much water at all. And get it super hot. Be careful, because super heated water in the microwave can be dangerous. So just be very careful. And I put instant crystals. I fill up this most of this little dish about halfway or better with coffee crystals, and I just add water a little bit at a time. Let those coffee crystals dissolve completely with as little water as possible. It will be watery. It's instant coffee. And then I just let it sit by a window where there's sun and or air to let as much of the water evaporate as fast as possible. And then what I end up with is paint. And I take a water brush, and now I can paint with it. But what I'm wondering, so I'm going to add just a little bit of water. Also, when I'm using this, I usually spritz it with the coffee so as not to water it down. I like that super dark color. Let's see if I can do this kind of stamping with it. Not perfect, but pretty cool. Let's see what the second one will look like. There's a glob in there. So the less water, the better. There. That's pretty cool. Like that. Like that a lot. So use it for stamping. Not just coffee rings, but any kind of mark making tool. I think if you can get coffee on it, you can make a mark with it. When I use anything but ink on my stamps, I try to clean it off right away because I don't want to ruin my stamps. They're made for ink. They're not made for coffee. They're not made for acrylic. They're not made for watercolor. All of those things work, but as soon as you can, get that cleaned off of there. That's important to keep your stamps healthy. So I also can and do stenciling with it. So this is a stencil that I just sprayed. I put my new Tim Holtz stencil on there. Some way, somehow. I guess I did right there. And just gave it a spray. Just super quick from far away on a mist. And that's what came out. It's a little messy because it is coffee and it will bleed underneath the stencil. I didn't hold it. I just laid it there. I imagine if I held it, it might be a little bit different. You get the tag shape of that. So that could just be a giant tag now if I backed it with cardstock, or I have my coffee print backing page. Comes free with my Etsy sales. With some of them, I'm not sure which one it's on, but it's just something that you can print out. I print it out on cardstock, and then I have a nice thick tag or journaling card with a pre-made coffee backing on it. This one, I did it the traditional way. I took my little sponge, which is mostly dry. You don't need much on here at all. I dipped it in my little coffee paint there and just dabbed it. Dab and mush and just like you would with acrylic paint. And again, get that coffee off there, because the next time if you want to do something white or white texture paste, that coffee will turn your texture paste yellow. It will coffee dye it. So anytime you're doing anything like this with coffee, get that stuff off your stencils and your stamps right away, because you don't want coffee stain in your bright pink peony journal or something. You want it to be clean and bright. So be vigilant. So we sprayed a stencil, we stenciled a stencil. Another thing that we can do is vintage some. This is just a State Farm envelope. Again, it does not take much at all. And then you just do with it what you would do with any other. You can vintage stuff up. Ideally, this would have been coffee dyed before I vintaged it up, because it's awful bright white for all that vintage stuff. But you get the point. It works the same as anything else that you vintage things up with. The other thing, spattering. I put my coffee dye in my coffee paint. Not coffee dye. I put my instant coffee spray. I just wet it a little bit to get these nice dark spatters, and then I work it around with a brush and then just spatter. Nice and dark. That's almost black, which is pretty awesome. I like the variation. So, spatter. Just paint. You know, if you want to whip up a little something. It's way too small of a coffee cup for my taste. We'll do a coffee, just a nice tall one. Easy. My plate is all jacked up. Look at that. Paint with it, spatter with it, stamp with it, vintage stuff up with it, spray it. Just spray it to get something fast if you want. I usually do that over the kitchen sink. If you happen to be a fan of coffee smell, this is perfect for you, because whew, it's coffee everywhere. I don't mind the smell of it at all. I love the smell of coffee. So this may not be for you if you're not a coffee smell lover. But if you are a coffee smell lover, the last little bit that I have for you is kind of off the beaten path, but sometimes the products that we use can be kind of smelly. E6000 glue, for example, has a pretty strong smell. For some people, the smell of Fabri-Tac and Fabri-Fix is a little bit strong. Another thing that you can do is take just a small dish, it doesn't take much more than this, and just pour some coffee crystals in here or some coffee grounds in here and let it set. And it works a little bit, just let it sit out. It works a little bit like a charcoal, like activated charcoal. It absorbs odor like baking soda does in your refrigerator. You can do the same thing with coffee grounds, or these coffee crystals. They absorb it and put out a nice coffee smell. Another thing, bonus tip, that I've used regular coffee for, not instant. I don't imagine it would be that much different. You just have to make sure your papers are everything is really dry. But regular coffee grounds, I've used them when I get stuff from St. Vinny's that's pretty stinky, cigarette smoke, like books or anything like that. I'll put it in a Ziploc bag with some coffee grounds, regular coffee grounds, and that absorbs it. I also put a paper bag or some newspaper in there, and that draws that stink out a little bit. I think sunshine and fresh air do the best job on that, but it's another use for coffee crystals or coffee grounds or ground coffee. I think that I have said all I need to say about coffee in the craft room. Oh, of course there's just having coffee with crafting. It goes hand in hand, right? There's always time and room for coffee. I hope this gives you some ideas, and I hope you, next time you go to $1.25 Tree, pick up it's a nice big container for $1.25, and you have no guilt in using it. And there's so many different things you can do in the craft room other than just dye paper. Stay tuned for more quick tips for the Junk Journal craft room. Go love up your beastlies. Have a lovely crafty day. Mate at the lake. Out for now.